So welcome everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. My name's Julie Kelley, I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager for Australian Property Investment Magazine. Just a quick note before we get started, just ensure that you've got your microphones on mute and your videos turned off during the presentation. We will have some time at the end of the webinar to answer questions, so please feel free to type in your questions in the chat room and we will get to them towards the end. So I'm very excited to be joined tonight by our special guests from Buildtech. We have Chris Icon, the Sales Manager, Sam McCarthy, the Project Sales Manager, and Dan DeCarno, the Project Director. So welcome guys, thank you.
Hi.
So for those of you that aren't familiar with Buildtech, they've been involved in some of the biggest regeneration programs in Adelaide. They partnered with the state government in being a preferred property developer and builder in projects which include Norwood Green and Bowden, 354 Bowden. Buildtech is a privately owned company. They've been around for more than 50 years and they have a really impressive property portfolio. So let's kick it off. Chris, Adelaide has proven to be less volatile to property market fluctuations compared to some of the other capital cities. This is particularly evident through the COVID-19 pandemic. Can you take us through the current state of the Adelaide market?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Julie. Look, I think the first part I want to start with is sort of getting an idea of how Adelaide is laid out. Adelaide is a planned city, so we are basically built as a grid. So if you can imagine a square is our CBD. To the east of it, we have the Adelaide Hills. To the west, we have the beach. Now from the hills to the beach is only about 25 kilometres. So Adelaide can't really grow east and west. There's a lot of infill in those areas. It grows more north and south. But being we've got about 1.2 million people that live in our metro locations. So for a city of our size, it functions really well by having a thriving CBD. So around about 200,000 people come to work every day and go home every day. So what you tend to find is those inner CBD suburbs, anything within 5 kilometres has really started to take off here in Adelaide, especially with changes going on at the moment, where people may not return to their CBD jobs, but they may be going in for 1 or 2 days a week. So they really want to be living close to that. So these inner CBD suburbs have really started to take off. Adelaide in general is always seen as a bit of a safe state. We have sort of small and consistent growths consistently over the last 10 to 15, even 20 years. Probably the feeling right now is probably, look, we've handled the COVID very, very well as a state. And we are starting to build our brand up at the moment where people are asking questions, why, how did the city handle it so well? And our property figures are starting to show that we were probably the only state to grow in the last quarter, which is reflective of that. The other times I've seen these sort of figures come out was probably GFC times, where Adelaide was seen as a place to park your cash. What we're also sort of seeing at the moment is our rentals are starting to increase. So our rentals are actually going up, which investors are liking. A bit of security around housing as well. Our vacancy rate has dropped down to 1%. So if you're looking at Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, they're over 2%, over 3%. Adelaide does really, really well. So that's probably the keys to Adelaide. It's a stable market. We've sort of had the same government for 16 years. So it's seen as a place to park your cash and consistent small growth.
Fantastic. Obviously Adelaide is tipped to outperform other capital cities in 2021. We've seen this through a number of different reports. What are your predictions for the South Australian housing market?
Look, there's still strong demand and there's limited properties on the market. So that's keeping values quite strong at the moment. It's a tightly held state in general. It's very tightly held, so we're not seeing that stock come on the market. Interest rates are at all-time low, so between strong demand and low supply, that's holding us up well. Now, our economy as well, we've sort of, locals, we know over the last 10 years we have transitioned from a manufacturing state we're now sort of focusing more on defence, space, you know, big data. So our industries are changing consistently here.
So you know, you've gone through a number of different factors there, which make Adelaide an extremely attractive market for property investors, offering, you know, low risk option but still producing solid results. Can you take us through some of those key fundamentals driving the housing market?
Yeah, sure. Look, it's probably the high-end industries that we're starting to attract here. We are predicted to be probably one of the only 2 states to grow in 2021. And that's on the back of, obviously handling the COVID's been a big asset for us. We have got a major focus on, the state government has here on medical research, healthcare, we've got good schools. We don't have the density that other cities have. And we're starting to see as well sort of grants come into the system as well. But we're actually seeing sort of our population is going to grow organically, mainly with a lot of expats looking to come home. They're probably the key drivers at the moment, I'd say, Julie.
Yeah. Dan, I'll throw this question to you. Particularly during COVID-19, we've seen an increase in government grants that are available and different incentives available to buyers. Can you take us through some of these and explain the eligibility criteria?
Yeah, sure, Julie. As Chris just mentioned, there's some government grants that are around the place announced by the federal government, which have been adopted by the South Australian government. One of them is the Home Builder Grant. So for an eligible project, and Sam will touch on Norwood shortly, Norwood is an eligible project for the Home Builder Grant. You can get $25,000 towards the purchase of that home. To be eligible, you need to earn as a single less than 125,000 and a couple less than 200,000. And the purchase price point is less than 750. So basically, that, you know, what we've noticed with Norwood since the announcement of that, it's brought back a lot of the inquiry back to very much levels basically since we launched the project. So there's certainly a lot more buyer interest coming through, and you know, it's a great sign, I guess, for the economy to see that activity happening.
Absolutely. Chris, as our audience is very familiar with, not all property markets or property types perform equally. Do you have any investment strategy advice specific to the Adelaide market that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, sure. Look, what you find is with our medium house price so affordable compared to the rest of the country, you really are looking at those inner CBD suburbs of Adelaide. Everything up to sort of 5 kilometres is consistently growing. We put a finger on it where you know you're consistently getting 5% growth and 5% rental yields. Now your budget is obviously going to dictate the property type that you buy, but we are finding sort of standalone, freestanding homes 5 kilometres from the city, somewhere between 500 and 750,000. And then property types in apartments, they're starting as low as 350,000 up to sort of 600,000 and 700,000 as well. So those property types, it depends on your budget, but the locations are really, the closer to the CBD in Adelaide you are, that's your strategy.
Dan, Buildtech's obviously renowned for its quality and also delivering some of Adelaide's most innovative and award-winning residential developments. Can you tell us a little bit more about Buildtech Group and some of the exciting new projects that are coming to market and some great investment opportunities that are available?
Yeah, sure, Julie. Yeah, sure. So the Buildtech Group has been around for around 45 years. It's a family-owned business. Was started by a gentleman called Tony Carocci, who is the father of Michael and Anthony, who are the current directors of the business. So Tony started the business with an eye to quality, and you can see that quality in construction basically coming through the projects that we're building at the moment. So both Bowden and Norwood are solid construction, tilt-up concrete. They'll stand the test of time. And I guess that attention to detail and the solidness of construction is one of the key things that sets us apart from some of the other projects around the place. You know, when we come to the selection of projects, we really keep an eye to the type of buyer that would buy into that project how they would want to live in it once the building's complete and we've done a successful handover to them. So we really put ourselves in their shoes and think about where would we want to live as being an Adelaide focused business, and that's what's come about the selection of the Norwood and Bowden projects. Perhaps if I throw over to Sam, and Sam could give an overview of the Norwood Green project.
Sure, thanks, Sam. Yeah, so Norwood Green is a master plan development less than 2 k's from the city. Norwood's one of our inner east suburbs, east being considered to be the better side of town for Adelaide, and Norwood is very much a blue chip suburb. The Norwood development itself is a redevelopment of what was an old industrial site of 20,000 square metres, which incorporates a couple of hundred apartments and about 30 odd townhouses. We've got a new supermarket on site with Audi, and there'll also be a range of retail offerings that'll form the base of the apartment buildings, which will make it a fairly vibrant little community in its own right, and smack bang in the middle of this pretty well reputed suburb of Adelaide. One of the main things with the design of if I talk about just the apartments at this stage, the way that Tectus, who are one of Adelaide's leading architects, who designed the building, they're really concentrated on maximising the light and the efficiency of the floor plan, so that we're not losing a lot of space to corridors. They're making the most of the space that we're offering here. The apartments themselves tend to be larger than typically you find in a lot of eastern states projects and even CBD in Adelaide. So we've got large floor plans, and on top of that having some really quite large balconies where we range anywhere from a standard sort of balcony size on a one bedder being 14, 15 square metres, right up to well over 50, 60 square metres for some of our larger apartments. So the focus has really been on living. The project itself has been designed for owner occupiers in mind, and that has played out with sales to date, with probably 80% of the project being sold to local owner occupiers. That we're seeing that's presenting a really good opportunity for investors now. We're finding more activity from the investors market now, both locally and from some of our interstate buyers that recognise that a project that is majority owner occupied does present a really good investment case for them. The projects that tend to be more owner occupied focused do tend to perform better in the long term, in terms of your better rental yields, but also your prospects for capital growth. I'll take you in a little while. We'll have a bit of a walk through the display centre here as well, so I can show you some of the sort of fit out features within the project. But I'll pass you over to Chris now, who's going to give you a bit of a rundown on what's happening at Bowden, the 354 project at Bowden.
Yeah, both projects, 354 Bowden and Norwood, are strategic locations for Adelaide. They're both within 2 kilometres of the CBD. They're both regeneration projects. They're both going through gentrification. Bowden is a government-backed development where you have free tram access into the CBD. So what you're finding in Bowden is got a vibrant community where a lot of first-home buyers, a lot of occupiers are looking to get close to the city, and it's a lot more affordable in the CBD and getting more bang for their buck, basically. Bowden's another development where it's got sort of 5 and 6 story buildings as opposed to skyscrapers. Adelaide doesn't like that sort of development, and BuildTec in general are the developers and the builders. So they've got a vested interest in both, so delivering a quality product. And we recently just handed over our first building in Bowden. We're about to hand over 2 more buildings now in August. So we're looking forward to welcoming new residents into the project. Again, very highly occupied, and at the same time that starts to attract investors because demand in there will get soaked up.
So should we take a walk through the display suite?
Yep. just get my trusty assistant to here at Norwood. We've sort of gone into a fair bit of effort to really demonstrate what the project's all about. We've got a 3D model of the entire development here, which really gives you a bit of a feel for, you know, I guess how large the site is, how, you know, the scale of the project, but it also, you know, helps people to get their bearings in terms of where everything goes. So we've got the 7-storey apartment buildings, which is essentially 5 buildings interlocked. There's a full basement level of car parking underneath the building, as well as some parking at ground level, which will satisfy the retail parking as well as some visitor parking. So at ground level, we also have running along the main road frontage, as well as back under one side, we've got retail tenancies, which will be a combination of some cafes and other specialist retailers there to complement the fact that the Audi building has just been completed next door to us here. So that was actually only opened about 3 weeks ago, and has been set up as Audi's their sort of I guess their #1 store for the Adelaide market. It's got a bit of a different feel than their standard Audis. We've also got an existing pub, the Animal Hotel, which is one of Adelaide's sort of popular pubs around this area. That's down on the other corner here. Then we have our townhouses, which run along Stephen Street at the back of the site. There's also some park areas that we've introduced to the site to, I guess, give it more of a community feel and have some of those breakout areas. So I'll take you over through to the apartment itself. So on display here, we've got an example of one of our apartments. This is modelled on a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's really here to just demonstrate the fit out, the quality of the apartments, the sort of fit out elements that we have, things like the floating timber floors, over into the kitchen. We have things like the Caesar stone benches as standard fit out. There's the Smeagol appliances where we have gas cooktops with a nice glass top stove, the oven, fully integrated dishwasher, things like the smoky mirror splashbacks and the LED lighting, all those sorts of things are standard finishes. We have our 2.7 ceilings, all ducted reverse cycle air conditioning and double glazing. So they are a high level of spec, which is expected for a project in an area like Norwood, and sort of fires that we have here. I'll take you through to the bedroom here. So we have all decent sized bedrooms, all with built-in robes. This one demonstrates an ensuite master bedroom. Things like the 100% wool carpets. We've also got going through to the bathroom, when you've got floor to ceiling tiles with a feature tile which wraps from the floor up the wall. Things like double shower heads, stone benches, mirror cabinets are all standard features, whether it's a 1, 2 or 3 bedder. So we're pretty happy with the fit out quality of the apartments, and the market certainly has responded to that. Taking it back over to the model now, take any questions if anyone has any of those.
All right, well, we do have one question. Any of our audience that have joined us, please feel free to write your questions into the chat room. We've got somebody asking how you would rate northeast of Adelaide, specifically Salisbury and Elizabeth, for its affordability.
Affordability, I think medium house price out there would be sort of low 300s. That would rent okay. Just my personal opinion on it would be you would run into a little bit of socio-economic issues. So you could fall behind in rent, you could have high vacancy rates, damage to your areas. It's not a bad area, you just have to be careful in the pockets that you go into, northeastern suburbs.
And in comparison to your 2 projects that we've spoken about tonight, what would be the upside of the Buildtech projects in comparison to investment options in these 2 regions?
Look, number 1 would be the school zones. The school zones around Norwood and Bowden, especially in Norwood, they're the hardest to get into. So you don't find product in that sort of under 400,000 range in Norwood to get into that school zone. So Norwood Green has been has allowed these first-time buyers and first-time investors with a $400,000 budget to get in here. So school zones would be number one, why I would come this way. And the rental yields, you probably get better growth, obviously, here than sort of northeastern suburbs. And our yields, so you'll get good yields and good growth in Norwood. Salisbury may have good yields, but you definitely won't have the growth.
Okay, fantastic. And for our audience that are residing overseas at the moment, foreign investors and expats, and specifically for our investors on the East Coast, what would be your number one takeaway message? Obviously, you've covered a lot of metrics tonight, but what would be the one thing you'd want to stick with the investment opportunity in Adelaide at the moment?
Safe and yields. 2 words, sorry.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agreed. All right. Well, thanks very much to the BuildTech team. We've really appreciated having you in our webinar tonight and imparting really insightful information to myself and to our audience. Thanks to all the guests that have attended tonight as well. In the next few days, we will release the recording of this webinar, so that will be emailed out to anybody that's registered. But in the meantime, if you've got any questions about the Adelaide property market or specifically BuildTech or their projects, feel free to email me directly. Other than that, have a wonderful evening, everybody, and we'll sign off. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you later.